My experience of shoring work and excavation work, going back to 1973, is a day that I was buried alive. And the sequences from that sort of day, I was paid by a contractor on the M3 extension work in Surrey to lay pipes. Predominantly, my role was to lay as many pipes in the day as I could and get paid accordingly. So health and safety really hadn't come in there. I don't think the Health and Safety Act had been passed by then. And PPE, hard hats, and those things, they just were never used unless you had to use them. The excavation I was working on was approximately 3.5 meters deep and in good sand, good strong standing sand, which is a bad thing because then you start to take it for granted that the ground's going to stand all the time. So shoring wise, we had trench sheets, we had some acros at our facility there to use if we wanted them, but we weren't using them. We were just cracking on laying pipes. During the course of the day while I was laying pipes, I sensed some vibrations going on and spoke to the ganger on the top side, and apparently on the other side of the motorway there was a double-sized roller compacting all the ground ready for the tarmac to go down, and I could feel that just sort of vibrating in the trench. So we thought maybe we should put a trench sheet or two down just in case. Apparently while he was lowering this trench sheet down, the ground started to move. He threw the trench sheet. The trench sheet hurtled through the air, hit me on the back of my head, knocked me unconscious and put me onto the bottom of the excavation, and the ground all collapsed. So I was buried alive. What I can remember of that is not too much, other than waking up in hospital. Apparently they got me out of the excavation because the excavation driver noticed that when the ground fallen in, I was actually protected by a steel sheet. So he dug down to the steel sheet, cleared it, and they found me underneath. Obviously one of their worries was that I may suffocate, but fortunately my head sort of fell just in the end of the pipeline. So I had fresh air coming down the pipeline, so that kept me going. So the next recollection was actually waking up in a hospital in Ascot, bruised and battered and beaten up a bit, and not really knowing what had gone on. But going back to the site days later when I returned to work, we talked about the job, talked about not using shoring and taking it for sort of granted that we hadn't bothered with things and what could have happened if that sheet hadn't fallen on my back, and the gang being sort of so alert to get me out. Obviously I've been in the industry for quite a few years now. That was back in the early 70s, and since then I've known that the things have changed, and they've been changing to benefit the workers rather than sort of just chasing the pound all the time. The next time I stepped in the trench, I treated it with more respect. We have this safety equipment, we have shoring equipment, and I've seen it added more and more into daily use. Because when you go in the ground and you think it's really good, you never really know what's laying alongside that trench and whether there's a void, there's something behind it, and it's likely to collapse. So I did become quite a good user when it came to shoring equipment, using trench sheets, whalers, close sheeting, and more laterally sort of trench boxes and things. So I became a sort of a follower. I decided, that was more important than chasing a few pounds for a few pipes going in the ground. I think the story tells people that if they want to come home to their families, be safe. When they go to a site, risk assessment, safety first. Your life was worth a lot more than just a few pounds laying some pipes. And that sort of thing, when you go to site every day, you got to think of the safety aspect. You, your people around you, what effects things happen if people try to take shortcuts, not use the equipment. Especially now, it is supplied. It's a requirement of all sites now, health and safety, ensuring equipment to be used. Well, since that sort of event and being buried alive and obviously becoming more and more aware of shoring equipment, my life did take a change. I decided to come out of the construction industry, not be a pipe layer anymore, and I joined a company selling shoring equipment, and that was back in 1976. It was the launch of the hydraulic shoring equipment, which was very easy to use, where people in the past had always moaned the amount of time it took to put trench sheets and acros in. This is a very quick way, and since then I spent most of my working life from 76 through to now involved with shoring and shoring companies. So I'm a real sort of a follower of this and believe health and safety and going to work, risk assessment, and taking all the right steps to protect yourself and all your work colleagues.